Welcome back to the Shared Services Advantage series. And you see, one of the very first big questions when you set up shared services you have to answer is, where do you build the center? Where do you build the team? Do you go offshore, nearshore? Do you keep it onshore? What's your location strategy? And how do you make a decision that works, not just for today, but as you're scaling as well? So to dig into this, Gyner and I are excited to be joined by Mitch Galutera, Global Director of Client Success at Origo. And Mitch has nearly 2 decades experience in shared services and BPO, and has helped a lot of platforms stand up their operation all over the world. So, Mitch, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me over, Yassin and Gyner. It's really great to be part of the show. You gave away a bit of my experience there, Yassin. 2 decades. Yes, I did start when I was 5.
Well, excited. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and what you do at the Origo?
So, absolutely. Yeah. So, at Origo, I oversee the function of client success and ensure that our clients who have entrusted us with a portion of their business get the maximum value out of it, whether it's in the back office or in the front office or IT and the like. A bit of my background. So 2 decades in offshoring, outsourcing, and most importantly, shared services. I started my career in the Philippines on the front line and moved up operationally and set up a couple of shared service centers in my day. My first shared service center I set up was for Capital One in Managua, Nicaragua, in Central America. We set up a
Nice.
600 seater there, mostly contact center, but that was a really successful initiative and launch. And then back in the
Mm.
Philippines, setting up a shared service center for NICE in contact as we mirrored
Mm.
their Salt Lake City office to also have the same capabilities for professional services to the network operations center. And really, working with multiple global teams. The last
Mm.
foray before going to Origo was working with as a delivery project executive for a satellite radio company, and that was the most globalized of all the locations. We had locations in San Salvador, El Salvador, Cairo, Egypt,
Wow.
Durban, South Africa.
Habibi.
Oh, you're Habibis, in Cairo. And then we had 2 sites in the Philippines as well. So that was really a pretty good and extensive foray into that. So when you talked about multiple geographies and locations, I was like ready to jump on and share my experience in doing so.
I love it. So a thing or two about location strategy. So, Mitch, why don't we dive into the basics? Like, why do we really need to think hard about location when it comes to shared services? Like, what role does it play in whether the model succeeds or fails?
Right, absolutely. Usually the first catalyst for folks going into the shared services foray is cost advantage, right? I mean,
Mm.
um, that's the initial prime mover or catalyst for that kind of change management or looking into that. But really, I would say that that is top of mind. That's what they think, but for me, that's not really what should be the
Mm.
driving force or priority for it. You again want to go back to where the value is, and the thing of value that's being created in the shared service are
Mm.
all the outputs and the back office functionalities. You need to leverage the scalability and the advantage of being able to follow the sun, and then of
Mm.
course the cultural pieces of where a particular workflow or function would be delivered at the best value. Again, pound for pound. So you're looking at both cost and the effectiveness of the delivery, and how finally also how that culture like folds into what you're trying to accomplish. Pretty much from a shared services standpoint or perspective.
Absolutely. So it's not just about the cost. Really, you want to think about the talent. You want to think about the time zone, the culture. So there's a lot of factors you need to consider, and we'll dive into these. But Gina, I mean, from your perspective as an operator, like how does location factor into your decision making when you're thinking about your shared services strategy?
Yeah, I think what's the problem you're trying to solve is a really important question to answer. So,
Mm,
give you two examples. One for us, with our IT teams, at one point we had a development project that we outsourced to Central America. And the reason we had to do it in Central America was we needed our daytime onshore teams to have the ongoing access with that development team, right? Because we
mm,
didn't want to do the whole we hand it off, it's overnight, and then you get communication. That
delay.
for the project we were trying to get done and the timeline we were trying to get it done, it was actually more efficient to have an offshore team that was in the same time zone because then you could
Mm,
just work more efficiently with them, right? They almost became an extension of our onshore team, right? The That said, the flip side of that is with a lot of our APAR functions, where we
mm,
use Origo as an example, or offshore teams in the Philippines, those are things that we have worked with Origo on, where we've said, hey, can you help us um, give us resources around the clock, like
mm.
effectively to so maybe on the customer service side, the Origo researchers are actually working sometimes at night in the Philippines, and really it's daytime here. And like you guys been great to help us with that, and offshore researchers will be. Um, but then some of them where it's like AR and some of the other functions, it's maybe okay for it to be a different time zone, right? Because it's not mission critical that the timing matches. So
Absolutely.
you almost have to think about I think Mitch was saying this, but as a customer, I'd say you almost have to think about assess your need and what is the need going to be not only now, but in perpetuity. My first example was a project
Yeah.
that had a
Mm,
timeline. My second example is, hey, for a longer period of time, right?
absolutely. So then comes the question of, okay, near shore, offshore, onshore. Like, how do you even weigh these choices, Mitch? Considering all the different factors that Gyner is talking about, like, it's like if you're thinking offshore, are you considering certain factors that maybe near shore has advantages over offshore? Like, how do you think about these different three location strategies?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, again, back to Giener's point, what is the problem you're trying to solve? All really comes to mind. And they all have their distinct advantages associated with it. So, like offshore, in essence, by definition, is we're looking at, geographical back office or shared service areas such as the Philippines, India, or South Africa.
Yep.
And near shore by definition is usually close here to the United States, and also sometimes areas that are also very aligned closer aligned to Western culture. So whether it's LATAM, Central America, the Caribbean, or like in essence Eastern Europe has also
Mm,
come about also as another
yeah.
consideration.
Especially for technology talent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then onshore, of course, is located here in the United States or in Canada. To a certain extent, we've seen also some success in, putting centers not in the United States, but also in Canada as well, because there's also a pretty good talent pool there. So, what is the culmination of the three is what they call right shoring, right? So, developing a
Mm,
strategy of mixing and matching. So, they all have their distinct advantages. Offshore is very really good at processes that at creating and developing those processes that you can standardize and move across, and repetitive but essential is what we call it. There's also a wealth in putting more volume in the offshore realm, again, because
mm,
there are some cost advantages, and more than the cost advantage, I'd like to harken back to the availability of talent. There just
mm,
is a rich availability of talent, whether you're going to the Philippines, India, South Africa. The talent that you will find who are capable of doing like some of the AP and AR functions that Giner alluded to earlier is right there. College graduates who are capable of delivering on that. The near shore advantage though is that again just like what Giner said, it's very close to your time zone. It's more closely associated with that. Now, certainly that hasn't been a hurdle because the night shift lifestyle in the Philippines is real. I did that for a good like 12 years and lived like a vampire pretty much. So which I love
I'm in vampire mode right now. It's
there you
5
are.
a.m. here in the Philippines. So
4:30 and you're still as chipper as you usually are, right? So yeah, but the nearshore advantage carries two things. Of course, it's very easy if you need to visit them often
Mm.
and have your presence there. It's just a same day flight. Normally, whether you're coming up from Miami or Dallas, you can get to a nearshore site very effectively. And then the onshore is also very aligned also with your local culture, very close to it. You can like look over the cubicle and just manage it accordingly. And
Mm.
you really get a wealth of expertise because they're very close to. Sometimes your back office requires you to be close to operations and
Mm.
to the production aspect of things, and so they have that distinct advantage of being right across the factory floor for them to be able to do that. But
Yeah.
pretty much those three have their mix of advantages. And then you zoom in like on the offshore, right? You have the Philippines, India, South Africa, for instance. The Philippines is really great with customer care, with communication,
Customer
anything that
experience,
front
client
office,
facing.
and
Yeah.
to that thing. India and India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, they're really like very strong in software development, process driving, compliance and auditing and all of those things. And like South Africa also now is emanating as a good escalation point because they have that smooth British sounding English and everything, and there's some readily available talent. And here in nearshore, you usually see very successful sales campaigns as well because
Mm.
folks here, they understand or they're aligned with the culture. They're very they're not hesitant to ask the question directly and outright. And so we've seen
Mm.
success also running
And
sales.
having bilingual roles also, like if
Yes.
you're looking for
Yeah.
Spanish, right?
Yeah.
If you're like in the California, Texas market,
Yeah.
Florida, yeah, sometimes you do require Spanish-speaking talent.
See,
Yeah.
this
There's
is
also, hey, well, I want to add a little bit to that, Mitch, just because my past experiences. There's also offshore development in certain parts of Europe and Israel
Mm.
specific to software development.
yeah.
So there are a lot of firms in like the Czech Republic, Poland,
Mm.
Israel.
Poland is hot.
Ukraine. Yeah.
Bulgaria.
Yeah,
Bulgaria too.
you can get really good, and the English barrier is a lot less.
Yeah.
So especially in technical roles, that's really important because you're trying to get requirements across for development work.
Mm.
So it's really important. Like a base requirement is they understand enough of the language where there isn't an impediment on technical requirements, because there's an efficiency factor to development cycles that's really important, and rework is expensive. So there's also that from I don't know.
Absolutely.
It's almost near shore and it's offshore. It's kind of mid shore.
Yeah.
That is.
It is. And Gyner, when did you decide it's like, okay, I'm not going to send this offshore. I want to keep it onshore. Like, would that be more like compliance type of roles or high information security?
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you had a center, right in Indianapolis,
Yep.
or Fishers. Sorry, Fishers.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you decide to have an onshore center?
Yeah. So call centers, onshore call centers, typically, I'll call them call centers or support centers in the US, but you'll see both those terms used interchangeably. A lot of times why they do that is what you're trying to do is optimize efficiency of your talent. So if you have one person in this office and one person in this office and one person in this office, the net of all that work is typically 2 people's worth of work. So by centralizing it, you cause this efficiency pickup because everybody's working together and you can optimize process. That's one. 2 is sometimes it's just easier to get talent in certain parts of the US too, right? Although it's more difficult now in Indy, 25, 30 years ago when we opened up in Indianapolis, it was kind of a hotbed for call centers. There was a ton of talent you could draw from. whereas other parts of the country is more difficult, right? So it's really hard, as an example, to run a call center somewhere in Northern California or Chicago or New York City.
Or
It's just-
New England, that area.
yeah, those are just really difficult places to put support centers. So some combination of geography, Yassin, and talent draw in the US is kind of where you would put those. And then, to the business, there's an optimization of process and costs that happens internally, even when you do it onshore.
Very interesting. And Mitch, like, what have you seen, operators, like, in terms of when they're deciding on their location strategy? What would you say, like, some of the biggest mistakes people make when deciding on a location?
Yeah, I mean, I alluded to it earlier. The biggest mistake is always thinking that cost savings is just the prime mover and the only thing that you need to look at. That is like mistake number one, because like, if you're only just looking at the savings that you will get, and then you end up again just throwing that cost savings into it and not focusing on the problem you need to solve and the thing of value that you require out of that center, then you'll end up just throwing more money into a money pit, and because it's not helping you solve things. For instance, I've seen instances or particular use cases in which sort of follow the sun, and we need somebody like on the ground right away, and so we'll keep it in the Latin America, because the cost is a little more expensive than the Philippines or India, but at least we can fly someone there, get them trained more, and that presence is there, and that that we have a on-site vendor manager there. But that was to be sent there for a customer service campaign that required a lot of empathy and care and all of that. So that cultural piece, while some succeed in it, there's really a more aggressive salesy approach in the country that we chose at that time. And so while they still had the presence and they were able to go to to that country often, they found that they were their customer experience scores or NPS was really going down, and so if they had only pursued a different strategy where we can just fly across the world, and we'll spend a little more and sending a team across the world, then but it was a better fit to the empathy that you see like in the Philippines, and how the care is successfully delivered, and how the ownership is there in that particular field. I'm not saying that one country is better than another. It's just that you just have to consider what the problem that needs to be solved was, and in this one you need like hyper care for customers, and so maybe it's better suited for the Philippines. But if you needed, on the flip side, also there were also other countries that are like, oh, we'll take advantage of the Philippines' cost. It's too expensive here in Latin America, but we want to drive a hard retention campaign on customers who are canceling from the service, and so they spent money for a customer care representative, which is again a different profile from a sales rep. And so that customer care representative was trained in the sales training, but of course it's not natural to them to be like to ask the question to the customers, because they feel like it's too abrasive. So that better fit in it. So the end of the day is like, what is the problem you need to solve? What is the valuable output that needs to be there? And where does it fit from a talent perspective, culture wise? Availability of talent is also one. Then of course, there's, the connectivity, the availability of logistical supply chains of training resources. Those are all of the questions that need to be solved. So the short answer of it, for what are the mistakes to be avoided, is not planning for every single thing properly. You need to be able to look at it and then plan accordingly and provide the support. Don't scrimp on the support from onshore to offshore as needed or necessary to really enculturate your workflow.
Yeah, this also speaks volume to having someone like with your experience to really advise on location strategy. It's not something you want to take lightly. Like, and if I'm maybe summarize some of the factors that you want to consider is one, like you said, talent availability, right? Does the location have enough qualified candidates for the profile based on the campaign or based on the function that you need? Two, is there like scalability? Can you expand fast? Is there like a deep talent pool
Yeah.
that you can tap into? And you talk about universities, maybe.
Yeah.
You talk about education. Yeah. So those are some of the things. And can you fly your team? Is it close enough to? Yeah. You talk about the stability, right? The infrastructure, especially in offshore locations, you want to think about
The
the
technology,
infrastructure, right? Is the
utility,
government invested?
the government. Yeah. That's
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, the political climate, the internet, and the overall business environment there. You talked about the cultural alignment, right? Do they understand the market? Will they integrate smoothly, especially like from a change management perspective, right? That cultural IQ sometimes play a big role. If it's such a drastic different culture, and they're, they if they struggle to adapt, that could literally break the entire model. Time zones is a key factor there. Communication style, are they direct? Are they less reserved? How are they? What kind of communication style are they used to? And last but not least, really, you're talking about the cost versus value, like attrition. Yeah, maybe you can save cost, but does it create long-term headache for you
Yeah.
if the turnover is high or there are quality issues? Um, Gyner, how does does maybe personalities or preferences play a role, like from an executive sponsor perspective? Um, when you've been in this sponsor role yourself, like what did that look like in practice, and how does the role of an executive sponsor drive a location strategy, and maybe biases even?
Yeah, there's definitely biases. Like this podcast may be listened by a lot of people. You have to be careful you don't put yourself in the trap of those biases. Like what you've heard, you'll hear the whole language barriers. What do all our customers think? Right away, it's like every what I'll call stereotypical stigma you can think of is going to come up, right?
Mm.
If you go into it as a sponsor with those stigmas, you're gonna have a really hard time solving for it. What I say is like take yourself out of it, and if there are concerns on communication, then ask your providers. We did this with Origo when I first joined Origo, right? Which is, hey, send me a couple of customer recordings. I'd love to hear a couple of conversations that your team has with other customers because they're recorded, and some customers are okay with it. We'd have to ask for the referral, and the customers, I think at the time it was a dental customer, and they said, fine, yeah, go ahead, listen to them. We don't care. And we were just listening for the interaction between the offshore and the customer, right?
Right.
It was fine. Like, as opposed to taking kind of this anecdotal feedback that's rooted in stereotypes, like, take those problem statements and go to your providers and ask them for examples, right? So take that stigma away and really work towards it. On choosing, which was your second question, for me, choice is all about what is it I'm trying to do, right? That's why I gave 2 examples earlier, and Mitch had really good specificity around it, which is like my problem statement is I have a 9-month engagement where I need to have offshore support and volume, as an example, to help me with the development cycle on an IT project. Great. I know nearshore is going to be better for me because I need them to work with my team, and I need to get this thing done in 9 months, and I need there to be access all day long as they're working through that project, right?
Right.
So now I know nearshore is a better choice. Whereas if I'm saying, hey, how do I scale my AR team in the next 12 to 24 months? And that's kind of my problem statement because I have a talent gap. Well, then offshore, like far shore or offshore, is a better potential for that. Right? You're going to get more cost savings. You're going to get better access to talent. You're going to have more providers. It's just your pool gets a lot bigger when that's, when you're looking at that type of a problem statement.
I love that. And then so Mitch, like, and how do you test it out? Like, do you just If like, let's say, okay, I want to go to the Philippines. I'm in Texas, right? I want to stand up a shared service center, and I want to have a customer service function over there. Do you just fly to the Philippines and stand up the center? Do you find someone who could, like, how do you think about testing the waters, or de-risking that location strategy decision?
Yeah, that's that's a great question, and really the way to approach it is just make sure that your change management is in order first and foremost, and that you have what processes are outlined that you want to transition and move
Mm,
offshore, and don't lose the expertise that you have here on shore while it's happening.
mm,
It's very important that that support is parallel or running in tandem with it as well. I've seen both situations where a company was just I would say almost desperate to get rid of some cost, and they just wanted to dump everything offshore. And it was always like, okay, here's 20 to 30 people. Here's the training material. We'll do 2 weeks of training, and you take those 30 people, and you don't expect the same results and then you're not getting the same results from onshore, and then now you're frustrated with the whole thing.
mm,
And versus a company that has also run the teams in parallel. They spent a little bit more because they kept their team of 12 to 15 here in the US, and then they moved it to the Philippines, and then started ramping it up, and then seeing the support, and then doing the proper shadowing and nesting, and then breaking out the process from what's simpler to the more complicated later on, until you get to the speed of proficiency where now they're able to align the onshore team to something more strategically important, or move them to other
mm,
areas. That's been more successful because, again, whether you do it, just think about it this way: whether you're doing it onshore to onshore, for instance, you have 15 people who have like 5 to 6 years of experience here onshore, and then you just cross it across the street to an outsourced provider. Even if they're onshore and you just dump it on them, they won't be successful,
mm,
because again, that's the way you just have to think about it, because knowledge transfer and processes, and experience that have been gained, it takes a while for you to be able to transition that over with proper change management. So it's important that when you decide to pull the trigger on that offshore, that you maintain sufficient runway
mm,
for you to be able to say that, yes, okay, this is a 6 month plan. We won't see that immediately from here, but this will equip the partner with the capability to scale, because we've now put a core team or a pilot
mm.
team there that is capable of expanding, and they've already absorbed all of that valuable information and knowledge that's
Mm.
necessary to be transferred.
Very interesting. So keep redundancy and maintain subject matter expertise onshore. But
Yeah.
once you've decided, and you planned it out, and you have a proper transition plan in place, do you advise someone to, like, hey, fly to the Philippines and set up your own center, find a vendor that's over there, hire on Upwork? Like, how do we test out the strategy?
Yeah, again, very close to what's the problem that needs to be solved. But essentially, it's just like if you want to fix your car, right? Like you can fix it on your own if you feel like you
Mm,
wanna. I go back to car analogies because they're best at doing it, right? So you can fix your car because I feel like I can tinker with it. So that's like hiring your own person on Upwork, and yeah, I'll run my own AR process and just like throw it out there. But again, you may wreck your car even more, or
mm,
depends on what the problem is. Or you could, potentially, hire some mechanics and set up your own shop, which is expensive and capital intensive. Or there's this mechanic with like 8 years of experience. Who knows Corvettes or
mm,
anything, or BMWs of the work, and let me trust him with that work and my car with
mm,
it, and most probably they'll diagnose it correctly, and everything. And again, it just again depends on what problem you need to have solved. And normally the best way is to go with a tried and tested provider,
okay.
um, and because they already know what the change management process is, align them and involve them in that whole enculturation process of like, how do I plan out the change management, how do I
Mm,
plan out the transition, what
mm,
processes need documentation,
mm,
what KT sessions need to be done, how what's the hiring profile like. So it's very successful when you fly an expert team from the Philippines actually to go to your site and facility and culturate, uh,
mm.
understand how the process is, bring them to the Gemba, right, to the place of value, and then and then bring that person back and have your person also come in. So now that you planted that seed, you have the capability of germinating it and being able to develop the experts there and develop that center of excellence. For me, that in my experience, over the past 2 decades, that has been the most
Right.
successful way of being able to set up your shared service center.
I love that. And if you have it's if part of your plan to own the capability and realize further synergies, like find maybe a vendor that has like a BOT model where they build it for you, operate it, and then transfer it to you.
Yeah, that's your
Gyner,
desired outcome at the end. Yeah.
yeah. And Gyner, what has been your preferred approach to shared services? Go build it yourself, find a vendor, a hybrid. Like, what's been your approach?
I think it's hybrid for me. Like, doesn't mean it's everybody. But I'm in service businesses, so like I think there are different kind of businesses that have different needs. Our needs, we could work through a hybrid, and really hybrid works best for us because we retain all that like legacy knowledge from the people who started the businesses or have been in those roles for a long period of time, and we leverage that knowledge with and complement it with an offshore team that helps us scale the business faster, right? Because in these businesses, it's a little tougher. Because some of them are small enough that if you unplug the knowledge and replace it just with an offshore team without kind of bridging that over time, you cause more work short term, and you also kind of take the value proposition away that you're trying to tell them. This is about help and scale, right?
Yeah.
So I like the hybrid, but it's because of where I'm at, not necessarily because it's the right answer more broadly.
Yeah. And did you build? Do you prefer to build your own center or leverage a vendor with an existing experience and infrastructure to build the team? What has been your approach?
No, shameless plug. I work with Origo a lot, so
maybe that was a setup question.
Yeah, it's a really great setup. But in all seriousness, we were looking to find a vendor when we found Origo. Right, that we didn't. Fortunately, I got introduced because I was explaining my problem statement about finding a vendor to a friend of mine who had been using Origo at a much smaller scale, but was knew of Origo and made the introduction, and then kind of it took off from there. But yeah, I mean, I usually find a vendor partner. It's really difficult to understand the complexities of doing it on your own.
Even though you come from a publicly traded company that actually has their own shared service center in the Philippines that's captive, that they operate, but you still prefer to go with a vendor instead of doing it yourself.
Yeah,
very interesting. All right, well, there you have it. Look, when it comes to location strategy, location, right? So the big lesson is where you build your shared services center matters. It's not just about cost lever, as Mitch emphasizes. It's a growth decision. There are multiple factors to take into consideration, and when you get it right, shared services can really become a key enabler to your strategy and scalable platform, as Gyner puts it. You can scale, but if you get it wrong, you're stuck with very expensive pivots down the line, and no one wants those. So Mitch, thank you so much, man, for sharing your global perspective on picking the right location. And Gyner, thank you for always grounding us in the operator's reality. So that's it for today's episode, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks.